The content in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. Whilst we love unpacking psychological research and evidence-based insights to support well-being, this podcast is not a substitute for personal mental health care or therapy. Nothing we say should be taken as individualised advice. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional. You deserve support that's tailored to you.
Welcome to This Might Help, where psychology research meets real life. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti.
And I'm Dr. Kira Hart. We're two Australian psychologists, and today we're discussing a topic I'm super passionate about.
Yes.
We're talking about people pleasing. What is it? Why so many of us, especially young women, are guilty of people pleasing?
Yeah.
And what can we do about it? How can we change so that people pleasing is less of a tendency that we experience?
Yes. I need this too. I need this episode desperately.
I love how we often do topics that are quite relevant to us.
Yeah.
Comes in handy.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Before we get into the content for today's episode, let's get started with our wellbeing wins and wobbles. Tell me, Lauren, what was your wellbeing win of the week?
I am just realizing that I've not pre-thought about my wellbeing wins and wobbles at all for this week. Typically when we record, I've had a bit of a think and thought, what's my wellbeing win and wobble? But I've actually done none of that. So this is very spur of the moment.
I have some ready if you want me to take over and you have a think.
I think we just wing it.
Okay.
Yeah. My wellbeing win is the Easter eggs that I've been eating because it's almost Easter time.
Yum.
And they've been delicious.
I had a hot cross bun yesterday and today. Best time of year.
Yeah. That's my wellbeing win. My wellbeing wobble is that I've been feeling exhausted, so tired, and have been having some regular naps, which are probably not that good for my nighttime sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my off the cuff wellbeing win and wobble. How about you, Kira?
My wellbeing win is I have a holiday coming up. So we'll be taking a break after this episode drops for a week or two whilst I'm in Sri Lanka with some friends.
Yes.
So
I hope you're doing your anticipatory savouring about that holiday.
that is my wellbeing win. I'm so excited for the holiday. I think about it and I'm just so keen. That's been my wellbeing win. Wellbeing wobble has been I've been pretty busy, so I think I'm just burning the candle at both ends and I'm similarly feeling quite exhausted. I'm not having any afternoon naps, but I could definitely do with one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes you really need them. We're getting stuck into people pleasing today. Much needed topic. What even is people pleasing?
So according to the Merriam-Webster definition, a people pleaser is a person who has an emotional need to please others, often at the expense of their own needs or desires.
Yes.
So it can be characterized by constantly prioritizing other people's needs over one's own, also putting other people's emotions and comfort above one's own.
Yeah.
It can look like saying yes to something when you actually mean no, or over apologizing, shrinking yourself and making yourself smaller, always being the one to organize something and never asking other people to kind of do you a favor or do anything in return.
Yeah.
So from the outside, people pleasing might look like someone's really kind and compassionate and caring, but on the inside, that person might be exhausted or they may be feeling resentment. They may be having a creeping sense that they've lost themselves along the way of prioritizing everyone else's needs above their own.
Yes. This is just making me think about how in the past and, even recently I've been told, oh, you've always got a smile on your face. You're always, putting your hand up to do the things. You're always so helpful. Like you've got everything together. And I was like, wow, that just is highlighting to me that I don't necessarily communicate the fact that all of that takes a lot of effort and work and is very stressful.
Yes.
Yes. So it might look like from the outside that everything is, going good, all is well, you're doing all of the things, but inside you can feel that exhaustion and that resentment building
Yeah.
from saying yes to everything, pleasing everyone else,
Yeah.
making sure everyone likes you and everything is going well, and
Yeah.
like being the peacekeeper.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a psychologist and researcher, Dr. Harriet Breaker,
Yep.
who has written the book The Disease to Please,
Yes.
which is about people pleasing.
Yes.
Their theory is the people pleasing triangle, which is quite similar to the CBT triangle, if people are familiar with CBT work.
Yeah.
There's 3 key points that interlocked and conceptualize the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of people pleasing.
Yeah.
So the thoughts or mindsets is often a unhelpful cognitive pattern.
Yeah.
For example, lots of shoulds and must statements like I should be helpful to others,
Yeah.
or if I say no, they won't like me. So some really unhelpful thinking styles. The behaviors and habits around people pleasing might be compulsively putting other people first,
Yeah.
always saying yes, never kind of standing up or being assertive and speaking your own needs, building an identity around being helpful and cooperative and appeasing others. And then emotions and feelings, we've mentioned some already, but feeling really exhausted, feeling anger, or feeling like you need to confront someone, but you're scared to confront someone, feeling frustrated that you're being walked all over, and also maybe avoiding those difficult conversations and negative emotions.
Yeah, yeah. So being driven to avoid those negative feelings that can come up, like
Yeah.
you want to avoid the feeling of anger, you want to avoid the confrontation, you want to avoid, or you're fearful of those feelings.
Yes.
And so kind of avoiding them at all costs.
Yeah. So people pleasing, I feel like it's a term thrown around a lot.
Yes.
But it's not simply someone's nice, someone's kind, they're a people pleaser. There's often underlying it a real sense of anxiety or fear of rejection and need for external validation. And from a well-being perspective, people who have people-pleasing tendencies also often have lower mental well-being and lower self-evaluation.
Yeah.
So
like a lower self-esteem or sense of themselves.
exactly.
Yeah.
So whilst we're talking about people pleasing today, and it is something really common, especially amongst young women, tend to experience it, we think it's such an important topic because along with keeping the peace and doing all the things to accommodate others, there can also be this harmful well-being side effect that's also really important to address as well.
Yeah. And people pleasing does work very well for everyone else around you because everyone's then reaping the benefits of your people pleasing behaviors. But on the inside, then it can create this sense of, anxiousness and fear and worry and exhaustion, which is not good. We want to shift that. We want to shift that pattern.
So let's chat about it. People pleasing being really common in women.
Yes.
Yeah.
So common in women. There was a 2022 YouGov poll of 1,000 adults in the US, and this found that 56% of women identify as people pleasers versus 42% of men.
So a lot of people out there.
Yeah, a lot of people. And still both high, but people probably know just when we're generally thinking about who is a people pleaser, it's more common in women. 70% of women report often going to great lengths to avoid conflict as well. And 46% of women say they feel responsible for how others feel. 43% of women struggle to establish boundaries, with all of the percentages in those areas being lower in men. So still high across the board, but just that genuine or that consistent pattern where
Yeah.
women are feeling like they're going to lengths to avoid conflict. They feel responsible for how everyone else around them is going, struggling to put those boundaries in, and then kind of all of that combined is this people pleasing behavior
Yes.
that's really common.
Yeah. So why does this happen? Why do women disproportionately experience people pleasing?
Mm.
We want to begin with just like socialization that happens in childhood.
Mm.
So people pleasing is not just a personality trait.
No.
It's often conditioned within us from really early on in life.
Yeah.
So research has found that girls as young as preschool are socialized to be more compliant than boys. There's often the social conditioning of a good girl. Like
Yeah.
you often hear, oh, she's such a good girl,
Yeah.
from early childhood. And this is when young girls are taught to be accommodating, nurturing, polite, sweet, and taught to prioritize relationships and other people's feelings over their own self assertion and self expression.
Yeah.
So, social conditioning tells girls to be quiet, pleasant, orientated towards others, and sometimes to not speak up for what they want. Which,
Yeah.
when we say all of this, it obviously leads to negative outcomes when we're conditioned to maybe not stand up for ourselves and to keep the peace, not rock the boat. You can see how these flow on negative mental health consequences follow. So, gender based stereotypes are also often continuously reinforced.
Yeah.
Women who assert themselves are sometimes labeled as difficult. And it's so frustrating that we're still having these conversations in 2026, but we
Yeah.
still are. Like, you only need to look in the media to see women being called difficult. It's
Yeah.
awful. But yeah, we kind of grow up in a society where girls and women are expected to be polite and sweet and kind and really caring and empathetic.
Yeah.
And whilst they're all great things, it's also important to recognize that people pleasing is really common and there's some negative downsides to it.
And then there's also a relationship too between trauma and the fawn response and people pleasing.
Exactly. So, if we consider the stress response and our human biology when we experience stresses, we often talk about the fight flight response, but there's also the fawn and freeze response, which sometimes go a bit underlooked, or I suppose they're less well researched.
Yeah.
But the fawn response, pioneered by Peter Walker, is a trauma response highly linked with people pleasing. So, fawning occurs when someone learns to appease or be overly kind to a source of threat as a survival strategy. What that might look like is someone says something that makes you feel really uncomfortable and feel threatened, but you laugh as a response to keep yourself safe. Or at work, maybe you've been given all these extra tasks that physically make your workload really demanding and difficult, but you are maybe feeling fearful about kind of speaking up and saying no to your boss. So you say yes and say, oh, I'm happy to kind of take them on, knowing that it is adding so much additional work to your workload.
Yeah.
Or over apologizing even when you haven't done anything wrong. Again, just wanting to avoid conflict and feeling threatened, and appeasing as a response to the threat rather than running away or fighting the threat, kind of that fight flight response.
Yes.
So, people pleasing and the fawn response is more common in individuals who have experienced repeated relational trauma, so who have experienced lots of relationship and interpersonal difficulties throughout their lifetime.
Yeah.
And even when the original threat is gone, the brain can continue to use this people pleasing, fawning response as the default survival strategy.
Yeah.
So it might just become someone's like common behavior that they feel a bit threatened and then they show the fawn response as their stress response.
They're feeling a threat or something's happening, which is heightening their nervous system, feeling really uncomfortable. And so then the result is to do whatever is kind of needed in that moment
Yeah.
to make sure you're avoiding that conflict or you're avoiding the possibility of, something happening
Yeah.
So like you said, in a workplace setting, it's, you're absolutely wanting to avoid any possibility of conflict. And so
Yeah.
making sure you're doing whatever's needed to
Yeah.
kind of please and placate. Yeah.
You're doing 130% of the
Yeah.
work because, you're not wanting to say no to a boss or to
Yes.
disappoint anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also attachment theory and those early life experiences that link in with people pleasing. So, attachment theory is the idea that early bonds with caregivers shape our patterns or our relationships throughout our life.
And attachment theory, it's super common in pop psychology at the moment.
Yeah.
So people have probably seen online like an anxious attachment style or
Yeah.
avoidant attachment style. And, my hinge match didn't message me back because he's an avoidant attachment style or something. Like it's very popular in pop psychology,
Yes.
these attachment styles.
Yes. And we will probably do an episode all about attachment
Let's
theory.
do it.
But there are attachment styles or certain attachment styles that are more associated with people pleasing behaviors.
Yeah.
So an anxious attachment style, this develops when caregiving was inconsistent throughout those kind of childhood years. So sometimes caregiving might be warm and responsive, and sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah.
And you learn that connection isn't necessarily reliable. And so you often start working to earn it.
Yeah.
So this can be thinking patterns like, if I can just be good enough or helpful enough or agreeable enough, you won't leave. Or if I just do everything right, then this person will stay there and be there for me.
Yeah.
So that is this kind of anxious attachment style. And anxiously attached individuals are often very averse to rejection or may have that fear of abandonment based on that kind of attachment style they've grown up with. And so then they may use people pleasing to maintain this closeness.
Exactly. Like who doesn't fear rejection and abandonment's like pretty common. But yes, the anxious attachment, people with that attachment style are really adverse to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then avoidant attachment can also be related to people pleasing. So this is driven by like a conflict avoidance, like we were talking about with the worst workplace scenario. We want to avoid any possible conflict. And so if you've got that type of attachment style, you can agree on the surface and say, yes, everything's fine. Yes, I'm agreeing to do that thing. But internally, you're either not really fully there, like, or not happy with the scenario or not in agreement. So someone asks you to help with something and you say, yes, absolutely, of course, but you feel really drained inside and you actually wish you'd said no.
So now let's discuss some psychological mechanisms that keep people pleasing going.
Yeah.
We've spoken a little bit about rejection sensitivity, and people pleasers often anticipate possible social rejection and overreact to perceived social rejection. They have that heightened sensitivity to being rejected and therefore want to avoid it at all cost. So accommodate things in order to not be rejected.
Yes. Emotional dependency is another mechanism that can keep people pleasing going. So if you feel emotionally dependent on others or have a fear of being alone as well, then you can engage in people pleasing. And that might look like abandoning your own wishes or your own wants and needs to fulfill that of a partner's or someone else in your life.
Yeah. As you're just kind of describing the emotional dependence, I'm just thinking it's so apparent in so many of our lives. So I'm really glad we're doing this episode, maybe for personal reasons, but also just I think it's really important to talk about this stuff because it is so common.
Yes.
Another thing people pleasing is highly associated with low self-esteem. So people pleasers can be prone to having low self-esteem and seeking that external validation, which, so many of us, we want external validation. We want the love and approval of our friends, family, peers, partner. So we do things to keep the peace, to impress people, to be polite and kind, to get that validation.
Yeah. And I guess for those who have a lower sense of self-esteem or who struggle with self-esteem and feeling, good about themselves, then they may be more prone to stay in this people-pleasing pattern.
Yeah.
Rather than, there might be some people that have a period of time where they're feeling a bit lower and they see those behaviors, those people-pleasing behaviors increase kind of temporarily versus when that's a consistent pattern and then you find that all of the time you're compromising your own wants and needs for others.
Exactly.
Guilt and responsibility is also another pattern that keeps people pleasing going. And this is if you feel really responsible for others' emotional states or feel really guilty if you, quote, fail to keep others happy or to keep others feeling good. So it might be that you really feel a strong sense of like ownership and responsibility over everyone around you feeling happy and things going well. And so you take that on.
Cognitive avoidance can also perpetuate people pleasing. It can function as an anxiety management strategy.
Yeah.
For instance, having a conflict with someone can elicit a lot of anxiety or fear in people. Conflict can be pretty scary for lots of people. So people pleasing as a cognitive avoidance strategy helps to manage that fear of disappointing others or avoiding those anxious triggers.
Yeah.
But what we know about like the cycle of avoidance, the more we avoid something, the more it just like perpetuates our anxiety and the cycle continues and continues.
Yes. There's a reinforcing cycle as
So
well.
many cycles.
Yeah. So when we accommodate others and we put other people's needs above our own, that is often repeatedly rewarded. So you often get approval or you get praise or you get told, wow, you are, such an asset to this team, or wow, you are always helping everyone and you're always doing these things.
You're so caring, you're so generous.
Yeah.
All these compliments.
And then you're also reducing the amount of conflict you might be experiencing or facing with other people. And so then that behavior can become self-perpetuating. Like you sacrifice your own needs again and again because you keep getting praised for it. And you keep getting this positive reinforcement from other people that that's so good or it's been a really good thing. And so then that leads you to do more of it generally. And in this same way, it can become a part of your identity. So it's common in the same way that we've talked about before, where like perfectionists will have positive views of perfectionism and say like, oh, this is, I'm a perfectionist and this is how it helps me to do things. People pleasers can also take it on as part of their identity. Like, yep, I'm a people pleaser. And again, it's getting reinforced positively by others around them.
100%. It's also important to talk about the mental health costs that are associated with people pleasing. People pleasing is correlated with higher depression, anxiety, and burnout. So anxiety and having hypervigilance about how other people are feeling or how they might react, constantly scanning for disapproval or being worried that you might upset someone. This is quite common in people who have people-pleasing tendencies.
Yeah. I think the way this has shown up for me before is a fear of getting in trouble. Like a fear of getting in trouble for something. And so making sure like everything's done right, everyone's happy about the way things have gone. And like, being hyper vigilant about that.
And just going back to our social conditioning as children, we're always taught, don't get in trouble, do the right thing, be good. And whilst that's all positive, if you carry kind of those beliefs throughout your whole life that I must always do the right thing and never let anyone down, sometimes you can neglect your own needs in the pursuit of making other people happy. Which leads us to burnout, another mental health cost. So just that emotional exhaustion from the relentless pursuit of being agreeable and helping out others and doing the most, never rocking the boat, can be exhausting.
And if you say yes to everything, then you end up doing everything, and burnout is, burnout
Inevitable.
follows. Also, when people pleasing is kind of going on, there can be difficulty expressing anger
Yes.
because, again, avoiding conflict and wanting to be pleasant, that suppressed anger can show up in other ways within our mental health as well. So people might experience features or traits of depression or low mood because there's that building anger or resentment internally that's, kind of not coming out anywhere.
Exactly.
And that can also result in relationship quality suffering. So you might feel that you have difficulty setting boundaries. People might risk being taken advantage of in relationships because they are looking after others' needs, others' wants, doing the right things for everyone else, but then feeling, like their needs are not being met.
Going back to anger, some people might think of anger as like a negative emotion or emotion to be avoided. But if we think about it, sometimes it's really, really valid to be angry. Like some things are really unfair or really awful, and anger is a really like natural response. Whereas if you're always trying to keep the peace and never be angry or never show your frustration and hurt at someone, you're almost doing a disservice by not allowing yourself to express your like raw emotion at that injustice. So I want to encourage listeners, if you think anger is a bad emotion and you can't express it, I want to encourage you to maybe challenge that thought, because sometimes anger can be really helpful and healthy.
Absolutely. And even when you're saying that, I'm thinking about how when we express these emotions and when we let people know, if a boundary is being crossed, if something's gone on that isn't okay, that then that also serves the other person in terms of them becoming aware of that behavior, being able to shift behavior, like knowing that something needs to change. Like if we think about our friendships, if we go along within a friendship never bringing up that, maybe something's being done that you weren't okay with, or maybe there's something that you want to change, but we're so scared to share that because we're fearful of this conflict or upsetting someone else, well, we're probably doing the other person a disservice by also not allowing them to grow from that information.
And to learn.
Yeah. That reminds me of the Brené Brown quote, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." So when you're in a conflict or you're feeling hurt or upset by something that someone has done, it's important to, feel that you can share that and let the other person know so that they can learn and grow from that.
Exactly. So true, Lauren. You and Brené Brown speak words of wisdom.
We know that people pleasing is so common. We know that it's especially common for women, and it can seem good on the outside or like we're doing all of the things and we're helping everyone else. But we know that on the inside, there can be a lot of costs to people pleasing and a lot of negative effects on our mental health. So let's take us through kind of some of the strategies or things that we can start building into our lives to help address a people-pleasing kind of pattern or cycle that we might find ourselves in. With this, though, it's really important that we talk about how people-pleasing can often be rooted in, or kind of the foundation of people-pleasing can be in those early life patterns, our early life experiences, attachment styles, and also traumas and interpersonal traumas like we talked about earlier, which can be really tricky to address and take a long time to work through, which is where therapy and work with a qualified like mental health clinician, like a psychologist, is really important. And so, seek out professional support to work through people pleasing when it is that pattern that's really ingrained in kind of the way you're approaching things.
100%. And as always, we'll include notes and support lines for helping professionals in the show notes of today's episode. But as always, reach out to a healthcare professional if this is something that's significantly impacting your life. We'll now speak through some strategies that you might just want to reflect on and consider for yourself if these tendencies are popping up in your life. So, recognizing your own patterns. Are there certain people or places where you feel like you are people pleasing? Perhaps it's within a work setting, perhaps it's in like your romantic relationships or with friends and family members. And in these settings, this is where you find yourself most agreeable or most suppressing your own needs in order to placate or in order to keep the peace.
Yes.
Identifying triggers, the specific people, as I just mentioned, but also if there's like specific emotions that trigger your people-pleasing tendencies. For example, anxiety around conflict or feeling guilty, like feeling like I don't want this person to be upset with me.
Like with lots of things we talk about on this podcast, we need to notice the pattern and have, I guess, a baseline level of awareness of what's going on for us to help shift those things or to do something about it. So the same with people pleasing, it's picking up, like you said, when it's happening, who it's happening with, and what it looks like for you so that you know when and where to kind of change that behavior or intervene. So one of these things is building your assertiveness.
I love assertiveness training and assertive communication. So we all have different communication styles. Maybe someone's naturally more passive or maybe more aggressive or maybe more assertive.
Yes.
But if you're finding yourself people pleasing and not standing up for yourself, not expressing your own needs, it might be worth building your assertive communication skills so that you have the confidence to kindly and calmly stand up for yourself and say to your boss, no, thank you. I actually don't have capacity to take on that additional task or to, express your hurt if a friend or partner or a family member has let you down. To kindly and calmly have those difficult conversations is so important and can be facilitated through assertiveness training or building your assertiveness skills.
Yes, and the assertiveness training is something that you might do through therapy with a psychologist as well. But we can also look for those small moments or instances within our days or within our lives where we can be a little bit more assertive. And it is a skill, like kind of training a muscle. You have to train your assertiveness muscle over time. And it's something that you can slowly build on.
100%.
Kind of work at. Also taking a pause. I really love this strategy because I think in theory we can say, okay, just say no to more things. Like don't say yes to everything, just say no more often. But that is really hard for a lot of people, including myself. I don't like to say no to things. And so it can be, instead of defaulting to saying yes, practice taking a pause when someone asks you for something or asks you to do something and say something like, let me get back to you on that, or I just need to check a few things, I need to think about that, and then I'll get back to you. And that gives you a bit of time to think through and, build up your plan for how you're going to say no if that's what you need to do. But it also interrupts that automatic response. And like what we were talking about with fawning, the automatic thing in those moments might be, I've got to say yes. I have to say absolutely, of course. But then this gives you a little bit of time. And even that brief 10-second pause can shift you from the kind of reactive state to a more reflective state and let you actually get a bit of space.
Another strategy is around boundaries. And I know psychologists, we harp on about boundaries a fair bit. But they are so important, especially for people with people-pleasing tendencies.
Absolutely.
Boundaries, it's not about controlling others. It's simply about expressing your own needs and standing up for yourself, which is so important.
Yes. And when we are people pleasers or we're wanting to make sure everyone is good all of the time, those boundaries can fade away. And so it can be about setting some boundaries, kind of starting small and specific, because it's probably going to feel really, really uncomfortable to set every single boundary all at once
Yes.
and feel very daunting. So just starting with small, kind of low stakes situations where you can put up a little bit of a boundary. One thing I can think of, especially when I've been in phases of burnout or there's been lots going on,
Yeah.
I've tried to put in small, low stakes boundaries around like protecting my time on a weekend, for example, and being able to build up that courage to say no to some different social things that I just can't take on in the
Yeah.
moment. So it can be small things like that that you build up over time. And there'll be lots of different areas in your life where boundaries may be relevant, like the workplace, social settings, family or relationship boundaries.
Yeah.
And so just having a think about where can I start putting a few little boundaries in place that build up that confidence in setting and keeping my boundaries.
Love that.
Also, when we think about people pleasing and how we can shift some of these patterns, we can think to values based decision making. So, making these decisions based on our values. And people pleasers will often engage in something we call experiential avoidance. And this is avoiding the discomfort of saying no by just saying yes.
Yeah.
So,
Avoiding conflict.
yeah, just avoiding any sense of discomfort that might arise. And so, to help us shift away from this, we can think about asking questions like, what do I actually value here? Is saying yes aligned with my values in this scenario, or is it aligned with my fear? Am I saying yes because I am fearful of the discomfort that will come from saying no? Or am I saying yes because this actually aligns with my values and I want to do this? If it's in the scenario where saying yes is aligned with my values, then absolutely that's what we're
Yeah.
moving towards. But if saying yes is actually just based around fear and wanting to avoid discomfort, that's when we're wanting to work towards saying no. And committing to that no is then moving us towards our values. And we want to do that even when that anxiety or discomfort might be present.
And another thing that can come up when people are experiencing people pleasing is being stuck in that negative thought pattern or those unhelpful thoughts. For example, someone might think, if I say no to this person, they'll hate me.
Yeah.
Or it might be, that all or nothing thinking or that catastrophizing thinking.
Yeah.
So, what can be really helpful is just to create some distance from your thoughts and to learn to notice our thoughts aren't always true.
Yeah.
And what we're thinking, we don't have to believe. We can create some distance for it. So, for example, you might think, I am having the thought, if I say no, that person will hate me, but it's just a thought and it's not true.
Yeah.
So, creating that distance, that doesn't make the thought go away, but it might loosen the grip on the anxiety you're feeling about saying no.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And when we're working on our people pleasing tendencies and we're trying to shift them, and we do have these thoughts that get really stuck and can be really uncomfortable, it is important to remember just to be kind to ourselves
Yes.
and just to have that self-compassion across this process, because when if we've never set boundaries before, if we've kind of never said no, or it's been really rare for us, when we start to do those things slowly, it is going to feel really uncomfortable to do. And it's it can be likely to bring up those feelings of guilt or those feelings of fear and anxiety about what will happen when I hold those boundaries or when I say no. And so being compassionate to ourselves when that happens is really important. And it's not easy to make those changes as well.
Yeah.
And it is often probably, easier, or the place of comfort in the moment is to say yes and to people please and to do those things.
Yeah.
But we know that the long term effects of that is really damaging, and that it is, has these really negative effects on our mental health and well-being in the long term that we really want to avoid.
Yes.
So when we're building up these skills, we need to remember to be really kind to ourselves and to be compassionate, and to remember that you're doing the hard work and it might feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. We're pushing in the right direction.
100%. As you said earlier, we can't say yes to everything.
No, we can't say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And I think, just as a final reminder, whilst we're going through these things, I'm just thinking that it is so important to reach out to a psychologist or go see your GP for a mental health care plan or a referral to work through some of this stuff with a therapist where you can, because it can be really hard work.
Exactly. And as always, we'll provide resources in the show notes of today's episode if you're needing some extra support.
Yes.
The research that we've used to shape today's episode will also be provided in the show notes.
Yeah.
We are on social media at This Might Help Podcast on Instagram and TikTok, and the video version is also available on YouTube.
It is.
Thank you so much for all your support. We really, really appreciate it. So if you loved this episode or some of our previous episodes, we'd really appreciate it if you shared it with like a friend or colleague or family member.
And you can follow us on Spotify as well. It is really helpful if you want little snippets or bits of information from what we've discussed and covered on the podcast. We summarize, the strategies and the tips and tricks, and we put them onto our Instagram too.
Exactly. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week.
Bye. This podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri land. We acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of this country. We honour their knowledge and resilience and the ongoing impacts of colonisation on well-being.